Hey everyone, it's Bald Nick, and did I immediately get sunburn on my scalp after shaving my head? Yes, I absolutely did that. Anyway, in this episode, we've got both Fedora and GNOME dropping X11 from the places where it actually matters. So this is actually the beginning of the end, for real this time. Then Microsoft also open sourced WSL and started writing a command line text editor for Windows 11 64-bit, which I think is fun. We also have Mozilla dropping Pocket and Fakespot to focus back on Firefox, which I think is a pretty good thing, and a lot of other topics, including this segue to our sponsor. Thanks to TuxCare for sponsoring this video. TuxCare offers state-of-the-art solutions to keep your open source systems secure thanks to its rebootless patching tools, which are available on many different Linux distros. They also deliver long-term support for older open source products with their endless lifecycle support services, which basically give you security patches for products, distros, software languages, and frameworks that are end of life. TuxCare also supports Alma Linux, the community-owned Red Hat Enterprise Linux compatible distro that many organizations have chosen as a replacement for CentOS. And if you're an enterprise customer of Alma Linux, you might like to know that TuxCare actually now has security hardening for Alma Linux. This is a part of the enterprise support for Alma Linux that TuxCare offers, and it gives you a bunch of controls that are pre-mapped to various security standards like FedRAMP, ISO 27001, PCI DSS, and more, meaning you don't start with a blank slate for your compliance efforts. You already have all you need to comply with industry standards. TuxCare also helps you implement compliance scanning to make sure that your efforts are aligned with the actual regulation. If you use Alma Linux in an enterprise setting, check out TuxCare's enterprise support. You'll get this security hardening, rebootless live patching, as many hours you want to talk infrastructure and improve how things work, and all that compliance-related scanning and implementation. It's a great service. The link is in the description below. So, Fedora elected to go Wayland only on its GNOME edition. The Fedora Steering Committee just agreed to the proposal to completely remove X11 packages from the repos in Fedora 43, meaning that in 6 months or so, Fedora users will be forced onto Wayland, provided Fedora users weren't already all Wayland users, because that distro has been pushing Wayland hard already. There's still some discussion on whether they will completely prevent users from starting an X11 session from GDM, or if they will let people who manage to install a GNOME X11 session through third-party repos start that session. If they decided to block X11 from being started, you would then have to install a GDM replacement, another login manager, as well as the GNOME X11 packages. And I think this would be a bit of an unnecessary barrier. Of course, X-Wayland still works perfectly, it's just the pure X11 GNOME session that will not be part of Fedora's repos anymore, but I'm sure third-party repos will pop up and add that back in no time, at least until GNOME decides to entirely drop X11, which is coming really soon, by the way. So, as far as I can tell, this is the first distro that had X11 support that decided to completely ditch it. And of course, other distros are going to follow suit. It is inevitable. X11 has no more developers apart from the X-Wayland related stuff. Wayland is where everyone is focusing their efforts. If you do want to keep X11, you might be able to do so for years and years because someone will probably maintain that with some duct tape and 2 hours a week. But honestly, you need to move to Wayland if you want recent modern Linux desktop features. Fedora knows this and they're generally on the forefront of this, so them making that move is not a surprise. The Plasma edition isn't really concerned by this because Plasma keeps supporting X11 at least until Plasma 7, which is probably not going to release for another 5 years maybe. But of course, GNOME is also deciding to completely ditch support for X11 sessions at the GDM level. GDM is the graphical login screen that lets you pick sessions or desktops that you want to run on your system. Currently, it has options for everything you might have access to, including an X11 session for GNOME. In GNOME 49, this will no longer be the case. X11 sessions for GNOME will just not be listed at all in GDM. Other desktops that have an X11 session will still see it listed in GDM, although this is also being discussed. This change can be reverted for now by any user by changing a line in the gdm.conf file, so it is not a full blocker, but it's definitely at least a roadblock to make it clear that X11 is not a supported option for GNOME. Of course, distributions could decide to ship GDM with that option enabled if they want to keep that X11 support. It is just a GNOME default setting that can always be bypassed, at least until the code that handles X11 is completely removed. Because yes, this is coming. The plan is for GNOME 50 to really start uprooting the code for X11 from GNOME, meaning that probably any distro that ships GNOME 50 will just not have X11 packages pre-installed, because that would make no sense. I won't dwell on this any further, you know the drill, it's Wayland, it's the future, it's actually the today for a lot of people, so this is going to happen to every distro out there at some point. Now, in a surprising move, Microsoft just open-sourced their entire Windows subsystem for Linux. You likely know what that does. It's a system baked into Windows that lets you run Linux distributions as virtual machines, mostly for development purposes, but with a solid integration with the Windows host, including GPU acceleration, displaying Linux graphical apps as if they were running natively on Windows, but also file system access, although some people told me that it is actually really slow to access the Windows file system when using Linux. Now, the code is now available on GitHub, and people can contribute and build that code base themselves if they want to. And this includes the file sharing systems, the binaries that are executed on your Linux VM to better integrate with Windows. It also includes the WSL service itself that starts virtual machines, plus the command line executables that you use to interact with the distro. So basically the entire stack. Microsoft already had open sourced their modified kernel because, well, they had to. It's a GPL project, so everything you modify has to be a GPL as well. And they also open sourced the part that enabled X and Wayland support on Windows. Microsoft says that they did all of that open sourcing to make sure that WSL can move fast enough. They're likely hoping to get some third-party contributions that would help improve the thing. It is under the MIT license, as far as I can tell. It's not a weird, specific, source-available Microsoft license that they would have called open source when it wasn't, so that's nice. Now, I know there's still a lot of debate on WSL. Is it another attempt to triple E the Linux desktop, embrace, extend, extinguish? Is it actually favoring Linux? Because some people might just never have used Linux but start using it through WSL because there's no risk to their system inherently. They find out that Linux is great and then they move to it. Or maybe people who would have installed Linux on their computers just stick to Windows because of WSL. It's hard to tell. Personally, I think it's a net positive for Linux. It gives access to solid development tools to people who can't move away from Windows, whether it's because their company doesn't let them or because they really prefer Windows and can't use Linux on their devices. But it does give you access to the power of Linux, but on Windows, and it still maintains Linux as the main development environment and operating system, and I think that's good. Now, Mozilla decided to shut down Pocket and Fakespot. These are services you might or might not know about. Pocket is a sort of read it later service where you store articles and you can sort them into folders so you can, well, read them later or find them again, even offline. Fakespot, on the other hand, is a service that lets you detect fake reviews and scams using AI to tell if those reviews are legitimate or not. It is an extension that you could add to Firefox to check whether reviews were legitimate or not. Although, as always, these services are really hit or miss because, well, they're chasing the latest scammers and fake review tech, and they can only react to that. Both of these services will be shut down. Pocket on July the 8th and Fakespot on July 1st. Existing Pocket users will be refunded if they had annual paid subscriptions, because apparently, yes, you could pay for using Pocket for some reason, and all data stored in Pocket will be removed on October 8th, with the API also shutting down at that date. The goal for Mozilla is to really focus on Firefox and focus on, as they say, what powers better browsing, or at least what matches browsing habits today. I think this makes total sense. Basically, everyone online asked Mozilla to stop trying to create new services and to just focus on Firefox. That's what they're doing. I used Pocket way back in the day. I think it was even before Mozilla bought it. I just traveled a lot by train, 3 hours, 3 or 4 times a week, and I needed something to read, and 3G just was not available everywhere at the time. So read it later offline was a pretty cool service. Nowadays, though, I don't really see any big need for it. I don't think it is a much used service for a lot of people. So shutting it down probably will annoy some amount of people. There are a lot of alternatives to that kind of stuff out there if you really need that use case. And I think Mozilla focusing their efforts on actual Firefox is good. This is what makes them all of their money through Google's deal, sure, but it's still what makes them the money. They need to regain market share here. They need to focus on that. So those services are gone, and I think it's not really a big deal. Now, Red Hat Enterprise Linux 10 was released this week, and it's a big one. Obviously, it is one of the most used Linux distros in the enterprise setting. It comes with GNOME 47 and the kernel 6.12, and the new remote desktop protocol instead of VNC, something that will be important for enterprise customers who might provide remote graphical desktops to their employees. Red Hat Enterprise Linux 10 also now comes with an extensions marketplace that provides community tools that have been vetted, and of course, because it's 2025, it comes with some AI stuff. First is Lightspeed, an AI-powered assistant that appears in the command line, which I think is interesting. It helps you troubleshoot and potentially resolve issues using the command line, which is a novel idea, I think. And second is hardware acceleration for AI workloads out of the box. Finally, Red Hat Enterprise Linux 10 is also immediately compliant with FIPS, the standard that the US federal government uses to gauge whether a system can be used by them or by one of their contractors. This compliance includes what they call post-quantum cryptography, meaning the system should be secure enough to not be too bothered by quantum computers that might start becoming a real product in the timeline or in the life cycle of Red Hat Enterprise Linux 10. Now, there are tons of other enterprise-focused changes. As a normal individual Linux desktop user, I don't much care about this. I would never use it, really. It's much too old for my needs, but it is a very important one in the enterprise context, and so it needed to be mentioned here. Also this week, Nvidia shared their plans for Wayland support in a post on their forums. They started by outlining what is not supported and possibly will never be, including stereo rendering using GLX, EGL or Vulkan, SLI Mosaic, but also a lot of the Nvidia settings. You just do not have as many options on Wayland as on X11 to configure the display through an independent driver-related app. What they plan to add in the future release is the mode set equals 1 parameter by default, so your GPU is initialized properly at boot during the boot process. So the system boots with the full GPU capabilities, and it has more seamless transitions from that boot screen to the graphical session without as many flickers. They also want to work on display multiplexing, as in letting the discrete GPU handle an external monitor that is plugged into it directly, something that currently requires the frames that the dedicated GPU renders to be passed to the integrated GPU beforehand, at least on Wayland. The color management pipeline is also in the works, likely to support the recent efforts made by KDE and GNOME in terms of HDR, and they also want to add VDP-AU and vGPU support, the former being an open source encode and decode library for videos, and the latter being a way to split a GPU's power between virtual machines by creating virtual GPUs. Now, this roadmap to me feels absolutely identical to the one that they shared a few months back, bar the elements that they already integrated into their drivers, but it is normal and actually nice to see Nvidia focusing on Wayland. With Fedora and GNOME ditching X11 support relatively soon, other distros will follow suit, and Nvidia is still a problematic use case for a lot of people, especially on Wayland and with ex-Wayland applications, so they do need to focus on that. I hope their roadmap also includes fixing all of the issues that people are experiencing, because adding back a few features is nice, but fixing the actual hindrances is probably better now. Now, if you needed more proof that Microsoft really doesn't care about people who want to use their computers as they see fit, they've just released an update to Windows to fix a 9-month-old bug that broke people's dual boots with Linux. 9 months to not break dual boots when installing Windows. Nice. Back in August 2024, Microsoft issued an update to Windows 11 that broke some dual boots with an error stating a security policy violation. They blacklisted certain UEFI executables through Secure Boot, and this just broke the boot process for Linux distros. They had provided a complicated workaround using the Windows registry and tweaking security policies manually, but it also meant that everyone who delayed installing updates and finally did it, or anyone who just installed a fully up-to-date version of Windows 11 as a dual boot, would lose access to their Linux installed by default if they wanted to use Secure Boot, which is generally turned on by default on most computers these days. Well, this month they finally issued an update to fix the problem by simply not applying the previous updates to systems where dual boot is detected. They even acknowledged that this was a bug because it was not supposed to apply that security policy to systems with a dual boot, but it did it anyway, so the fix was probably extremely simple, and it took them 9 months to fix that system breaking bug that they created. And it's always really fun to dunk on Microsoft for being really bad at their job or being actually harmful to the customer, but this time I don't think it's funny. It's very clearly malicious intent. They did want to break those dual boots because avoiding that was super easy. Fixing the problem was apparently super easy as well. It's just, let's not apply this policy if a dual boot is detected. They are able to do this. It shouldn't have taken 9 months to fix that. It's very clearly malicious to break people's dual boots, and it sucks. And let's conclude this video with some gaming news. First, the Steam Deck passed yet another milestone with more than 19,000 games marked as playable or verified. That's 12,800 playable games and 6,200 verified ones, although there are still 4,800 unplayable titles that need a solution. At least some of them do. Not all of them will be playable on deck, even if we fixed all anti-cheat problems, of course. This also means that there will likely be 19,000 compatible games for SteamOS devices once these land in the hands of customers and the SteamOS compatibility rating program is deployed to everyone. That's a lot of games. Whether you consider gaming handhelds, consoles, or PCs is up to you, but if we say we're consoles, because they are, no console ever had that amount of games available to it as far as I can tell, and that's really cool. Newly verified games include Spider-Man 2, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, or Green Hell, among others. And it's really nice to see that Valve is not slowing down their efforts in terms of validating those games. We all know the problems with this program. The fact that developers of the actual games aren't involved in it is an issue, because ratings will change from under the feet of users without any strong commitments from the game developers, but it's still nice to have access to that as a baked-in feature of Steam. And especially if we start looking at SteamOS on other devices than the Steam Deck, 19,000 titles is a big plus to try and draw people in. Quantity is not everything. People will still not go with SteamOS if they want to play something that SteamOS doesn't support, like for example Fortnite, Apex Legends, stuff like that. But this general quantity of games will definitely be a very big draw for a lot of people. And speaking of SteamOS, Valve released SteamOS 3.7.8 yesterday, and it's the first stable release on that new 3.7 branch. It is a big one because it is the version that has support for AMD-powered handhelds, like the Lenovo Legion Go S. This is complete with the SteamOS compatible tab in your library if you play on that specific handheld. You can also expect a full-on downloadable recovery image. Valve says that it's only meant to work on other AMD-powered handhelds, like for example the ROG Ally and the original Legion Go. It's not like it's fully supported yet, it's for testing purposes. It's probably not going to work with Nvidia GPUs or anything like that, but at least you can sort of try it in an official way. All of this improved support is achieved through an update to the Arch base of the distro, moving to the kernel 6.11 and to newer Mesa drivers. Also interesting for desktop users of the DEC or of SteamOS, the Plasma version that they use goes up to 6.2.5 from 5.27, meaning you're gonna get the equivalent of 2 full years of updates to your desktop experience in just one go. I don't know why they didn't go with 6.3, it is very stable, it is really not buggy, and 6.4 is coming out in less than a month, so it sucks to still be 4 months behind. After being 2 years behind, I don't think that's as much of a problem though. You also get plenty of other smaller changes, including a battery charge limit control, tons of bug fixes and small improvements around Bluetooth, controller support, the Steam Deck dock, variable refresh rate, internet connectivity, the interface itself, and more. Obviously, if you have a Steam Deck, you should perform that update. It's going to give you better performance, better idle battery consumption, and everything around that. It's a nice one, and I'd be interested to see if this ISO can be used to maybe install SteamOS on any computer, laptop or desktop, not necessarily a handheld. I don't think they're going to support stuff like Nvidia GPUs or Nvidia drivers, but I would like to see what the installer maybe looks like, what they added onto that, and how it works, so maybe I'll give it a shot myself on a spare laptop. Speaking of laptops, how about I tell you about today's sponsor, Tuxedo Computers? If by some miracle you haven't heard about them by now, they are a Linux hardware manufacturer. They sell laptops and desktops that ship with Linux pre-installed. And the reason why this matters is, well, you know that all the hardware inside of your device just works with Linux, and that's kind of better than just buying a Windows computer and hoping and praying that things are going to run perfectly. They have a big range of computers that will serve every price point and every need, and personally I only use their stuff nowadays. I do all of that podcast and video and everything channel related on one of their laptops, and all my gaming needs are served by one of their desktops, so I don't even use any other computer that hasn't been made by Tuxedo anymore. If you need a new computer, if you want to run Linux on it, if you want to support a company that actively contributes to Linux, click the link in the description and check out Tuxedo Computers. They're really good. Anyway, this will conclude today's episode. I hope you enjoyed watching it, or more likely listening to it. You know where all the usual YouTube buttons are. Please click them to make the channel go up a little bit. Numbers are nice, and when they go up, it makes me feel happy. Maybe it might even help me regrow some hair. Who knows? You'll tell me. Click the buttons, and you'll see what it does. Anyway, you know what to do. All the links to support the channel are, as usual, in the description. And I guess you'll see me in the next one next week. Bye!